The El Paso shooting, red-blue issue, up to GD? It's up to us. PaRaDiSe ReCivilization. Hi, I'm Rick from Austin, Texas, and I'm offering the PaRaDiSe ReCivilization principle. It's a formula solution which confers the greatest benefit to humanity. Springing on this, I'm bidding for the Nobel Peace Prize and spearheading it by jogging as independent candidate for the U.S. Senate, Texas 2020. I have the enthusiasm for getting to the bottom of things. As Cindy, I'm not in the blaming business. I'm neither for nor against Donnie. The fact of the matter is that nobody really seems to understand what's going on down deep anyway. This needs some explaining. The El Paso, Texas shooting August 3rd at 10:40 a.m. was a hate crime against Hispanics and Mexicans as per the shooter's own manifesto to counter the Hispanic invasion of Texas, the latest version of the Reconquista scare. I feel the tragedy very close at home, being a Hispanic borderlands Mexican immigrant myself, and an USIM on top of that, originally from the twin cities of Ciudad Acuña, Coahuila, and Del Rio, Texas. In the aftermath of the shooting, if you ask around and do a survey regarding our broken world and what can be done to fix it, you'll probably get two sets of replies. On the one hand, you'll get the usual problematic red and blue issue of Second Amendment right to bear arms versus gun control, and on the other hand, surrender to the Savior and leave it up to GD to directly intervene to put things right. In either case, it's a sum zero do nothing, and absolutely nothing can be done on our part to resolve things. But before we jump straight into the solution of the problem pressing us, let's do some reviewing of the elements comprising the display they will be using to represent the state of things. Please see accompanying slide. The ellipse stands for the one whole S, all the while the right triangle represents the triad parts PRD. The rule is contraries, thesis D and antithesis P, go on opposite sides of the right triangle, standing on their shoulders with synthesis R on the hypotenuse. It is quite arbitrary which is which. It's ultimately conventional. The relationship is what counts. As built-in reminder, I'll include both the PaRaDiSe formula of triad parts PRD and one whole S, as well as the main example nomenclature of body P, mind R, spirit D, and being S on the right triangle and the ellipse. Please see accompanying slide. The past blocks the path of the present to the future. The past needs addressing upfront to move forward. But how do we escalate? Well, that's precisely the solution that I've been trying to tell you all this time. It's by way of the PaRaDiSe ReCivilization formula. I have the explanation, but it's not a quick, skin-deep fix, nor is it limited in scope. It's from the big picture, long duration of things, the exact opposite of the usual short-sighted and rushed explanation of the news media. Our contemporary public figures of choice are just bots playing out tragic roles on the American world stage. My solution, by contrast, is the PaRaDiSe formula of ReCivilization. We're neither puppets nor are we moved by instinct. It's ultimately up to us. Let's take it from the top. Just like there's individual insight, there's also collective oversight. Invariably, we have to start from time zero with the truth of things as PaRaDiSe. The triad parts PRD makes the one whole S. In order to arrive at the formula, I combine science, philosophy, and theology, any of which are hard in themselves, but surprisingly easy when viewed wholly. That's what I love about PaRaDiSe. Please see accompanying slide. Our present-day situation sort of reminds me of the tragic Boeing 737 MAX jet of trying to fix a structural, outdated design issue with software patches to the system. My explanation is that the American experiment is a product of the 18th century Enlightenment project of reason. The problem is that reason was never delivered regarding what is right thinking. In any case, back then America was predominantly white and at times were individualistic. We haven't kept pace with the social ideas of the 19th century, haven't had the need to crossbreed ideas so as to arrive with 20th century hybrid, settling instead for ground level 20th century mixed. The mantra simply was, don't fix it if it isn't broken. And it obviously wasn't, for how else could you explain American success worldwide when everybody else around was struggling? Then was then, now is now. Fast forward to interpretation. So then, the shootings of home and white terrorism are nothing other than glitches in the system stemming from incompatibility between, on the one hand, 18th century European individualistic liberal conservative ideas of the Enlightenment period, and on the other hand, 19th century social critical ideas worldwide, and more recently 20th century updates of eclectic thought. Arguments make sense by building on accepted values and beliefs. Assumptions vary depending on the historical period in question. Say, 18th century individualism, 19th century socialism, and 20th century hybrid or mixed. Case in point, today America. The red right assumes suppositions of 18th century individualism and European dominance, now appearing as out of touch as white supremacy, whereas today's blue left are more attuned to 19th century social critical ideas. But this is the deal. Jointly, they don't come even close to 20th century hybrid highway. They're more like 20th century messed up, I would say. 18th century and 19th centuries are in the anteroom of the 20th century. The difference between 20th hybrid and 20th mixed is that the former is an improvement of either separately, hence highway, whereas the latter makes things worse jointly, hence messed up. Please see accompanying slide. It's okay to separate at first, so long as you reunite on second story, because if you void out by not joining them later, you are effectively killing the dynamics of change. That is, instead of jumping onto hybrid as highway, you're stuck on mixed, remaining as messed up. For example, separating science from religion is okay for starts, but if not joined later somehow, then you are effectively killing philosophy. This is what has been occurring of late, and you end up voiding the remit mind of philosophy altogether. We need to move on from lower registered 20th mixed to higher registered 20th hybrid. Messed up is being at loggerheads with endless fighting, whereas highway is superseding it by rising on the middle ground as if standing on the shoulders of the access roads. In all this we need, as it were, a lone star on the horizon in order to give us a sense of our overall direction. The whole solution is universal rights 21st century. The core idea is PaRaDiSe ReCivilization formula for fixing and making whole our broken world. Well, this is my tuppence to the issue of addressing the root causes of the terrorism of home and white shootings in our midst as Hispanic immigrant from Mexico to the ongoing conversation and as Anusim. I have the calling to serve, the message of the PaRaDiSe formula to disseminate, and the mission of ReCivilization to realize. Éntrale a la bola, no seas canica. Let's roll, don't marvel. Let's fix our broken world by PaRaDiSe ReCivilization formula, and let's win the Nobel Peace Prize 2020. Yours truly, Rick, and GD bless.